Hey guys, welcome back to Unleashed. We are so glad you're with us. Music started to fade there, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to say something here.
Got to catch up.
Man, it's good to be back with you guys, and we are officially, finally, we are in springtime. And I am so thankful. I don't know about you guys. We talked about this during the winter. I am not a cold weather person. And when I'm hunting and I'm dressed for it, yeah, for a little while. But outside of that, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm so ready for these longer days we've got now. And Eric, are you like on your bike? Are you out hitting it?
Not yet. It's too cold. It is too cold to be riding a bike right now.
I was going to say, you said it's officially spring. I mean, it is officially spring, but in relationship to the temp outside, I think there's some confusion.
Well, when I was coming in here, I was thinking about him riding his bike. And as I was driving down 8th Street coming down here, the wind was blowing, what was it coming from? What direction would it have been coming from? Like I don't know if it was coming from the north, where it was. But the leaves were perfectly I had my window down because it was sunny, and I'm like, yeah, it's like 50, but it was still sunny. The leaves started like hitting like bullets coming through my window.
Yeah.
So I rolled the window. And
23 mile an hour out of the west.
Was it coming out of the west? Okay, yeah. Yeah, riding a bike in this stuff, you could get hurt.
You could get hurt.
I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah.
Now, when you first say bike, I'm always thinking the type you pedal, okay? Because I have several friends that are really into
that's
cycling.
what we're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a pedaler?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like Harley.
No.
Yeah, he gets on his bike, and was it 500 miles this year you were?
Yeah, I wanted to break 1,000 last year, and I didn't do it. So I'm gonna make it happen this year.
Great.
Yeah, I get on my treadmill at home. I get my iPad out. I put it up on my treadmill, and I can put it whatever I want. If I want it to be a scene, in the mountains, or if I just want to watch something, get my mind someplace else, and kind of disappear from a lot of this stuff. Let me just kind of introduce our guest today. You've heard him before. Keith Wooden was my pastor for many, many years, close friend, and we were sitting. Was it Panera? We many times.
Yeah, most of our conversations revolve around a Panera moment.
We get like multiple cups of coffee, get all jacked up. But we were talking recently about, some political things, and honestly, that's been like the topic of conversation for probably 2 years. Because we've seen this major shift happening, and it's upsetting a lot of people, and some people are happy in this fight that goes back and forth. So that's going to set up today's podcast. And I sat around, I'm like, what should I name this? And I think it's going to be called, we'll see, Sacrificing Relationships on the Altar of Politics. And I wanted to start off, and you know this story. And Keith and I will be real honest. We'll be sitting there talking about stuff, how do we handle, because both of us being, pastors or being in ministry and dealing with people all the time, you have people that see things the way you do. You have people that don't see things the way you do. They have one way that they see that they think that the Christian life should be, another way they think you should be doing it this way. And the problem is it divides. It has come to the point where we are now so divided. It's when we say a nation divided, that's a big picture. But I want to bring it down. I want to really narrow that down. It is separating parents from their children, pastors from people in their congregation, relatives, husbands and wives. I mean, you name it. And I remember sitting down and telling you something about my wife, Stacy. She hasn't been on Facebook now for about 6 months.
Wow.
I think she's made like one post. I'll even say, hey, did you see that scripture or something I put up to you? Because I don't get on there anymore.
And that takes a lot of discipline because she was passionate about Facebook. It was one of the places where she had her voice.
It was. And because she has an amazing story, and you heard her on here maybe a year and a half ago or something. But she never really cared much about politics. She grew up with a certain political viewpoint, because of the way she grew up. And then she began to ask questions, after we got married and things. And so she began to kind of research and really look deeper, and I think that's wonderful. But I think as a person is finding their voice in that, we begin to side or see people that see things the way we do, and we tend to maybe get a little more vocal about it. And that's okay. That's okay.
It's called confirmation bias.
Well, and it's like, but how do you handle that? Is it a dialogue? Or does it become an argument? And arguments are okay. Tension is okay.
Yeah.
But how are you handling that difference of opinion, right?
Right.
Facts are facts, truth is truth, but opinions are opinions.
Yeah, the old joke is with regard to opinions, opinions are like butts. Everybody has
That's one, right?
but most of them are cracked.
But oh, that was good. Yeah, I'll probably do that at home, and I'll get the bad dad joke.
Yeah, that's
thing.
right.
That's
You'll get the bad dad joke.
But so she had posted something, and the post was honestly misunderstood by the way she worded it. And it's difficult when you're on social media. You feel like you're spinning all these plates to make sure that no one's going to be offended anymore, right? You're running around the room. I got to keep that one spinning. I got to say it this way. And when you have to keep doing that, after a while, you become exhausted. And you go, you know what? Is it really worth the effort anymore?
Yeah.
And when she put this post up, let me just kind of set it, and then we'll get into this discussion. It caused a big division with someone, was a friend close to her, and so much that they were, for a couple of months not talking to each other. And it wasn't that she wanted that, but it deeply offended the other person. So we sat down, we talked about, say, what possibly could have been misunderstood the way you said it. Would you have said it any differently if you could have, would have, should have, kind of a deal. And finally she said, you know what? We can talk at home about stuff, but I don't think I want to put it out there because whenever I put something out there or I see someone else put something out there, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. It seems like someone on the other side is unhealthy enough that they will go on the attack, with the name calling, character assassination, trying to prove a point. And rather than becoming a good listener, we begin to try to take control of something to prove we're right. And so I want to kind of start with that. And, with Keith, we're going to get into this. And I want this to be a conversation like we do when we're at Panera, where it's almost like you guys who are listening to this, you don't exist right now. Not to mean to be mean.
Yeah, seriously.
But I want you to kind of hear the way we talk about it. So
yeah, this is so interesting. The last 2 weeks, I've been in different places in church, okay? And over the last 2 weeks, this has been the topic, not the issues in particular, but the polarization.
Yes.
And there was a straw poll. Just, raise your hand. Just, so in other words, there's not a plus or minus veracity to it in terms of whether it's an accurate poll. Just raise your hand. Do you feel like we're more polarized today? 100%. 100% of the hands went up, and so it's pretty evident that we've got an issue of polarization around us. And then we it comes back to one of the things that intrigues me, and where we get into this or how we get into this is, what is that basis? I mean, one of the things you mentioned there is that we have these opinions and ideas and places where we all come from. But what is the root of it? And so, as we, this is one of the things we talk about a lot in terms of our conversations is what are the roots of what are this polarizing tendency? I mean, one of the things you just mentioned that intrigued me because I had thought about it. Then I thought, I don't know whether I'll talk about that or not. But what being one of them is proving a point or coming out of our own confirmation bias or our own concept. And then the other idea being, is it based on some of our own insecurities? Is this polarization based on some of our own insecurities and our need desperately to be right?
Yeah, to be heard, to be seen.
Yeah.
Do you care about my opinions?
Yeah. I mean, that becomes a really big thing. And it may be that we're not as polarized. I know we're polarized. Don't get me wrong. I know where we're at, but we may not be as polarized as what we really think we are. If there's a big if there. If these things were taking place, if there was an unpacking of some of the motivations and the ideas and where we're coming from and things like that. So
I know this to be true, that when my anxiety, anger, whatever that emotion is, begins to heighten, right? It's like that animal. It's like fight or flight. Now I don't always post that stuff because I'm healthy enough, I think, to know better than to do that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't still experience it and feel it. And sometimes really deeply. Sometimes I'm shaking my head and going, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Right? And I do that with people on both sides. I'm like, what made you think that was the way to talk about somebody, whether it be a president, whether it be someone in Congress, the Senate, or a person who sees things differently than you do?
Yeah. We're not even just talking about politics. I mean, that's the nature of where you came from. But we're not just talking about politics in this. The polarization has become familial.
Yes.
Two things. One, it takes me back to a conversation we had. First of all, it started online, and then you and I sat down over at Panera a few weeks later. Is that from my history that I almost never, ever, 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 ever post anything political. I'm more apt to post something that's humorous, okay?
Yes.
Or just a little bit twisted or something along that line. And I actually very seldom post anything even of a nature of that is prone to be about a particular topic. I quoted a C.S. Lewis thing the other day.
I was going to bring that up today. I loved it.
It was a powerful thing, and I thought, this one's safe. I can post this.
It's one of my new favorite quotes.
Oh,
say
yes.
it. This is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I'd have to look it up again.
But it was around anger.
Yeah. Well, it was
grief.
Yeah, it was talking about. C.S. Lewis was talking about it was anger until he was attributing the anger to a female perspective until she told me it really is grief, and my eyes were wide open on that one. It was a great quote. I'll look it up here in just a moment because I think it's worth it. But anyway, going back to the idea is, you sent me something really quickly. And one of the things I had done early on after I posted it, I had put a terminus point. I said, I'm taking this down at 12:30 because I knew where it would go. And I knew, the further in we went, the more it would just foment. And I remember one guy said, when I got ready to take it down, I said, I think we've run our course. It's 12:30, and I took it down. And he texted me really quick. He said, you were right. It had run its course.
I remember seeing it that morning, again, and I know you well enough that you don't post anything political. And when I was kind of like, I messaged Stacy and I said, did you see Keith's post? And I said, I've never seen him post. I said, I don't know what there was a reason, but there must be something underneath it, an experience or something that's causing him to feel like I needed to say something. And then when you and I talked about it later, you're like, well, I was kind of like trying to see what was happening with people and how they felt about this situation. And
well, even I think it's really interesting. I think I want to go back to something you just said, because we usually speak out of our experiences, out of our connections, out of our ideas, don't we? I mean, There's something inside of us. And of course, I think you probably know this, that my family served for 15 years in the Ukraine as missionaries. And so I had a history with Ukraine in that one. And so it was very interesting to have that perspective. And I hadn't even really thought about that until you just mentioned it. Did I speak out of that connection? We don't always examine our internals, where we're coming from in those moments, do we?
And I've spent a lot of time in Russia and in Ukraine. I've stayed in people's homes. I've prayed with people in the churches, the underground churches. And so when all this stuff is going on, I'm going, okay, so we see people, taking sides or whatever it is. And I look at this and I go, but there's good people on both sides.
Man, I had a conversation. It's very, very interesting because I want to go back into a personal experience with my son, and I don't think Keaton would mind me mentioning this at all, but Keaton and I had a time period in our lives where we had to work really, 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 really hard to regain relationship. And I'm saying relationship because there had been an extended period of time of radio silence between us. And I'm going to say not particularly on my side, but on his side because of his hurts and some of the things that he was feeling. And some of them were based not even on the facts. And so we ended up having some great conversations, rebuilding a relationship, and now it's in an incredibly different place. And so much so that we have been able to really revisit our differences because we're listening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here's something that I think is so powerful, Brent. to understand the issue of being connected and defined. Let me invert those, okay? Defined and connected, okay? And I'm going to put it this way. If we're defined, we know who we are, what we're about, and we also are able to express that and act on that. That's only one part of being defined, though. The other part of being defined, that's knowing me, okay? That's the one part. The other part of being defined, and I think this is so powerful, Brent, is letting you know who you are and respecting you who you are, and also letting you express it, act on it, and even act on it, okay? Then the next part kicks in. So we have, because Brent, you and I both know, we probably don't align perfectly on a lot of political issues, okay? And I think this is the reason why we're sitting here, in fact, okay? It's not that we are sitting on opposite sides of the table at all. We just have maybe a margin of error, if you will, on how we view things or the perspective we view things in. But I respect who you are so much in how you are defined and how I am defined. And we have that mutual respect so that it's defined and connected, so that now we refuse to let anything draw the line between us. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. If I can't listen well to you or somebody else, especially I'm talking about we're in a relationship, not just reading a post, right? Then I am worried about being right. Oh. And this comes back to identity. And I always say it's always, always, always about identity. When people have to try to control a situation, a conversation, that they have to be right. And I've said this before, like in a marriage, if you have to win, you've already lost. And so when I think about these kind of conversations, if I don't know where my one true identity comes from, in other words, I am 100% complete in Christ Jesus who is in me. Everything I will ever need comes from him. If I get something out of line, he doesn't think less of me. If I get it right, he doesn't think more of me. When I can apply that same thing to people, and we're talking about politics today, when I'm secure in who I am in Christ, I can listen to you. I can say, tell me your story, because I can tell you that hit a nerve. You're passionate about that. And I wonder what it is sometimes then that makes me, with my experience, I wrote something years ago. I think it was in my book. I think it was in The Roar Within. But it was something I developed called Guide. And I know, Keith, I've showed that to you before. And it really all it is, it's a listening technique. It diffuses an argument. I'm going to go through it really quick. G stands for get some truth. You know, because both of us are going to have a reason. So we have truth. But it's not my job right now to try to tell you what I believe. I want to get your truth.
Get it.
Yes, I want to get your truth. You, in Guide, is understand before being understood. Well, it's empathy, right? I want to repeat and rephrase because I really do want to get the truth. I want to understand before being understood. And the third thing is I, which is inquiry. It's now, hey, I'm going to ask some questions. Tell me why that was so important to you. I want to know. I want to know you. Everybody wants to be known. So then when we get to D is discuss my feelings. Now, I don't tell you my feelings until I've had a chance to do in Guide, GUI. Get the truth, understand before being understood, and inquire. Ask questions. And when I ask questions, I want to do it. Here's one of the keys with that is I do it without an agenda. Because if I have an agenda, you're already going to shut down. If I start to put anything out there that's got the aroma of an agenda, you smell it, and immediately it's that I'm going to protect myself here. I see where this is going.
Oh, man, that right there, I'm going to protect myself.
Yeah.
That's so key. And so once we get in a position where somebody is feeling like they have to protect a position or protect themselves especially, breakdown, then you got to go back up. You got to go back up into the Guide.
Stop and go back to G again.
That's right. You do.
But once I know that they trust me, now that's one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is trust. But once I know that they trust me, now I can do D, which is discuss my feelings, because I've taken the time to listen to you, to care for you, to know that you're seen, heard, you're important to me. Then I can discuss my feelings, and now they're more willing to listen. And then E is encouragement. You know, it's bringing hope back into the conversation by something like, "Wow, I'm so glad I got a chance to really hear your point of view. I really respect that," or whatever. But when we try to get louder, when we start needing to use derogatory words or a character assassination, I can't remember the exact quote, but I think it was Socrates. But basically, when we have to resort to those things, healthy dialogue is now gone.
That's right. That's right. You know, in one sense, I don't want you to go through those that quickly, because guide is such a fundamental principle. And I know it's going to be coming out in another book in the future. And yet the essence of it, because you shared it with me a few weeks ago, when we were upstairs in the room there, it was so beneficial to just have an acronym that was so easy to follow in conversations, to disarm. And interestingly enough, one of the things that has been beneficial for me is to find that if I find those areas of commonality, if I find the areas of unity, then, you know, in that moment, we come into a whole new relationship. Brent, you and I were talking the other day, and it was so interesting because you brought up the Beatitudes, and specifically this Beatitude. It said, "You're blessed," or "you're," you know, and I love that blessed word, but man, it's hard to get our mind fully around that concept. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete.
Yeah.
Whoa, that is the essence of guide, isn't it?
Yes.
That is the essence of guide. I mean, when you finish the book, I'd put that one as the little verse that's on one of the inner first pages. I'd put that right on there. This is the essence of it.
And is it Proverbs? It's 18. It says, "The tongue has power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." You know, words can give life, or they can suck the life out of you. And when I think about the words, when people are spewing the vitriol that I see, and one of the coolest things I'm liking about on Facebook right now is you can block somebody for 30 days. Now, I'm not saying block them because I want to unfriend you. I'm still your friend. I just get tired of seeing the vitriol. You can put your opinion up. I can scroll past it. That's fine. But when I start seeing people that all they want to do is put someone down and using derogatory names rather than having a plan, well, what would you do different? And why would you do it? Tell me your story, because you matter. See, when we start hearing someone from Ukraine's story about what they've been through, you have compassion for them. Same thing in Russia. When I sat down in the underground church and I heard some of their stories, I was moved to go, wow, you know, there are governments in this world that are evil. I mean, really.
Yeah.
But there are really good people there that are held hostage by this stuff that need their voice heard as well. And I think one of the things that has happened, when I see someone really posting in unhealthy ways, I think there are two things driving it: fear and pride. I think they are afraid that maybe something's not going to change and they see the need for change, or they're so prideful that they have to be right and they want to prove you wrong. And wow, anytime that I live in fear or I live in pride, God gave us emotions. Emotions are healthy, but there's unhealthy ways to look at that emotion.
That's right.
And it can drive you.
Yeah. Okay. So help me subtext this for a second, because fear and pride, I would agree, are fundamental to the equation here. Okay. But help me subtext it as, where does the concept of our own insecurities, you know, this need to fight, to be right, is that the subtext of pride still then?
Well, I think when you said a minute ago about anger and grief, I think there's when we get angry about something, there's a grief that we're not being seen.
Let me read that. I pulled it up, okay, so that I can quote it. C.S. Lewis, "I sat with anger long enough until she told me her real name was grief." And when we come back to that, so much of our grief, and grief comes in a lot of different packages. Most people just run to death when they're talking about grief, but grief can be in a severed relationship, in a divorce, in a friendship, in a especially with our kids, you know, and it's easy to retreat to anger in those moments. It really is.
I want to put something out there that I never thought I would ever talk about. God challenged me on this today, and I didn't know whether this would come up or not. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much. Huh?
But it's one of those things the Holy Spirit's not going to allow me to
Way to go.
to kind of get away from. I want to be really vulnerable here, and I'm going to share something. I don't know whether it'll bring up tears or not. I have no clue. But this whole thing, when we've been talking about people's experiences shape how they believe or see things. And you can both be Christians, right? And you can look at something, but you're looking at it in a different way, and you're going to wonder why we're looking at things differently. So, was it Michelangelo? I forget who was the person that said, as a writer, tell your stories. If someone should have acted differently, that's on them. Tell your story because it impacted you. Mm-hmm. Well, I've never written this in a book, but I just felt like, again, Holy Spirit was pursuing me. So my story very well, as good as anybody, and I've shared it on here, but you know me better than my stories that I tell on here. Well, it's been, I don't know how many years ago now, I was in a grace-based community of people that loved Jesus, that loved grace, that loved freedom, that really taught me what living out of my one true identity was really, really like. It changed everything in my life. And I mean everything, and you know that about me.
Yeah.
I went through a painful divorce, something that I don't think anyone ever wants to go through or think that they will, and that changes you radically.
Yeah.
The way you think you're going to grow old with someone or family systems still getting together for holidays, or all those things that happen.
It changes everything.
And we both been through that pain. Different reasons, different ways, but we've both been through it. So within this community that I was in for so many years, invested my life, my family relationships, everything, when I went through the divorce, the silence was deafening from the community that I was in. And it wasn't just deafening. There were some things that I was uninvited to.
Yes.
And a lot of the people within there, we were still friends even though we saw things differently. But because my experience felt like I was being shunned, and I think that's fairly accurate. I don't know that was necessarily the intent, but I think that was what happened out of it. I still to this day can carry that. Now, I can choose to carry it, or I can choose to go back to my identity and remember that a person, if they're acting that way, it's because they're buying into a lie themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Even people that believe and understand freedom and grace, they still can buy into lies because God is not the author of the lie. The enemy is. So when we are looking at this thing we're talking about today, when we have differences and something gets between us, we know that God isn't getting between us, right?
Yeah.
The enemy loves to put lies in our heads. So
right.
he creates something within you to make you think a certain way because that thought creates feelings. Mm-hmm. And here's the problem. We have a media that loves to play on your feelings.
Oh, they have to. That's their ratings.
Yes. And so now what ends up happening is...
And they like to play on your anger.
The feelings.
Yeah.
I feel, whenever you're trying to identify a feeling, just start the word like I feel, boom, there it is.
Yep.
Angry. Afraid. And so now what happens is we act on it. And like what we're seeing right now, I'm only saying this because I'm seeing it on the news right now. People are lighting these car dealerships and cars on fire and painting swastikas and everything. Now, that's what we're talking about is it's one thing to protest. It's another thing to have, or one thing to have your voice. Everybody's free to do that. That's the beauty of this country. But when you have to resort to those type of things where you're putting someone's character down, you are demeaning with names like we've seen some of these names calling, and that now violence, and even some like we saw, with 2 assassination attempts. I don't know how else to say it, but that gets shoved under the rug. Well, I'm not trying to look at a party. I'm looking at a person's belief system. Why did you think that was the right thing to do?
Well, that laughter is a laughter of this is beyond the pale of imagination.
It's crazy.
Sometimes. It's crazy thinking, and how the tide can turn in a moment as to what we approve of and what we disapprove of. So, I mean, but you're right. Let's go back to that essence. There was this moment in that where the emotion, an unhealthy emotion based on a fundamental lie, okay? So we know that those two are going to couple themselves together with one another. And so that led to, and Brent, it couldn't be more appropriate because we were needing to send out an invitation today to a person who has felt very marginalized by us, my wife and I. And we wanted to make sure that we sent this invitation so that the person could understand, no, we don't want that. We want to build bridges. We want to build relationships. And so, man, when you're telling that story, it's not only yours, it's mine too. It's a personal story. Only in this case, I was the one marginalizing, and you were the one in your story. You were the one who was feeling that marginalization from others. So, I mean, it's a painful reality.
Well, and when I said about a 30-day block, there are people that are my friends still on Facebook that don't see things the way I do. But it's not that I want to block them necessarily because their views are different. Sometimes it is. I mean, but the way they handle it. But to be honest, and I'm being really honest, it's because of the hurt that I went through, because of the way that it was handled. It makes it difficult for me to hear their voice.
Wow. Okay. So some of them fell within that camp of people that had straight-armed you.
Yes.
And now the vitriol is still there in their conversations today.
And that's when I have to go back and say,
Wow,
God, I don't want to feel that, because that's why your post hit me about anger and grief. Because when I start to feel angry when I see someone's name pop up, I still love that person.
There you go.
It's not anger.
It's not anger.
My heart is broken.
You know, Brent, we'll rewind it for a while here. I've told you that in terms of the essence of locating people's lies, okay, and helping coach them through those lies, you are probably the quintessential. We both learned it from another source, okay? We learned it together, but you are the most quintessential assist or coach in helping people discover their lies, okay? But one time I was sitting across from you at Panera, and I remember this moment it was well. We were just talking, and I could see how deep the hurt was. And I said, Brent, this is not something you can talk yourself through. This is a moment when you have to feel grief. It was over the death of your dad. And I told you, I don't think you've ever grieved your father's death. And, you know, we went through two deaths in our family in 10 days here. Actually, 2 deaths in 1 week. And so we as a family are having to deal with that grief. And I can argue with the truth and the lies, but sometimes I have to feel the feel before I can get back to going through the steps. So, man, thanks for being so vulnerable in that moment as well, but also for recognizing when we're dealing with people, when we're dealing with, I'm going to use the word again, the vitriol that's taking place, when we're dealing with the polarization, we need to take the step back and walk through the guide, even if they're not present, okay?
Yeah.
We need to walk through that guide. And that's why I say, I don't want you to rush through it, man. I have to come back to this over and over and over. And this particular acronym has made more sense to me than any of the other acronyms. And heaven knows we've toyed with a bunch of them, okay?
Hey, what do you think of this one?
How's this one fit?
I changed that word.
Yeah. And this one registers. And it's, I think, because it is not just a really whitewashing the fence to make it look pretty. It's getting to the depth of real relationship. And that's what's hurting me so deeply about the polarization.
I think that if we were to go back and look at scriptures, all kinds of scriptures you can pull up on this. Believe me, today I was looking at them and there's tons.
There are.
But I was thinking about just something that doesn't necessarily talk about the way you speak to someone. There's lots of things. But I think one of the most important things is, you can speak to someone and you're told not to, and it can hurt a person and the relationship and Jesus, or, that we're supposed to do it this way. But I think we're given a roadmap, which is we have to go back. You mentioned the root earlier. I think we have to go back to 2 Corinthians 10:6. It says we are to take every thought captive. Yeah. What are you thinking that's causing you to feel this way? In other words, you have to think through what you are thinking. So when you go to make a post, someone that's out there and they're saying, I'm so angry. Okay, stop, pause. Go back to 2 Corinthians 10:6. What are you thinking? Think through it. If it's causing you to have a lot of unhealthy emotions. Now, again, let me say negative emotions, because emotions to themselves are not unhealthy. God gave you all emotions, so you'll know whether something's good, right, whatever. But when you go back and you have, what's causing me to feel this negative? Write it down. Or do you feel like you don't have a voice? You feel like no one knows your story and that's why you feel so passionate about this? Rather than vomiting it on social media and closing off the ears like my ears got closed. I just shared with you about sometimes when I see a post, I just want to scroll by it or mute it because I can't. It causes so much pain. Is that the reason? Is it really anger or are you feeling grief? Because your story has made you feel, let's just look at real honest. We look at a president right now, the last two presidents. That's where the polarization, a lot of it's coming from.
Yeah.
You didn't see it this way. You didn't see it that way. And so we have stories. Well, here's why you feel so passionate about this issue or this issue. And we have to be able to break it down. What is it about that issue that is so important to you? If you really want people to listen to you well, and it's not just about having a counter answer. Like, as we always say, well, you need to have an answer. If you're going to bring it up, you better have something you're going to fix it with. We don't always have the answer to something, right? But when we can break it down and go, what is it that it's causing me to feel like this? And then unpack that. Even if you need to go to somebody else, sit down and say, I'm really feeling this way. Because once you put it out there, oh, here we go. Perfect example. When you break trust with someone, it's like you have a bank account. When you break trust, you've made a withdrawal from that relational bank account.
You sure have, yeah.
And they say once you make that, it takes about 5 deposits to get your account back to where it was. Yep. So once you've done that withdrawal, think through what you're thinking before you ever do it, because that withdrawal is huge. And like I just said with me, it can last a long time.
It can last a long time. And boy, there's so many layers here, man, as we're talking about this, because I think one of the things that's so incredible about our relationship is this ability to talk about. I mean, you wrote me within, I don't know how long. I think you were in the car when you read it or something, or heard it, what I wrote. But you wrote me at the first opportunity. Okay, we have such a high level of trust with one another.
Yeah.
My reaction could have been negative. Okay. What's he doing? Da, 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 da.
Oh, you mean about the post you made?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wrote me right away. But we have such a high level of trust, between us, that what's beautiful about those moments is that it was symbiotic right away. Yeah. Thanks. I actually felt grateful to have someone to talk with about this.
Because we need healthy challenging. It creates tension, which makes us think through, okay, why did I do it? What did it cause? Because I immediately came back and I was like, hey, dude, what's up with that?
That's exactly, I think, how what you said. What's up with that?
It's
you never do this.
It's like different branches of the military. They can tease each other, right? Oh, you're a jarhead. You can go back but they respect you.
Yep. And trust and respect are two sides of the same coin, if you will. And can I also say that since your audience is mostly men, okay, respect is our golden coin.
It's the number 2 man killer that I talked about.
Exactly.
Lack of respect.
Lack of respect. And I'll tell you, nothing ignites me from 0 to 100 miles an hour like feeling, not somebody intending, but feeling like I've been disrespected, okay?
Yeah.
Now, what has brought that disrespect on, and I mean, it's one of those things that I see red on, okay? I mean, I don't know whether everybody has I see red moments, but I don't think you do have I see red moments. I do, okay? And I lose all perspective when I get that angry, okay?
Yeah.
And so it is very important in relationship that respect is maintained, trust is maintained, so my ears remain open and my heart is available.
And we can only do that when we stay in the moment because usually if you're getting upset about something like disrespect or whatever, we're thinking about a past thought, the way someone treated me, or a future thought. It's that it's that living in between, that stay in the moment.
Yeah. Boy, is that hard.
Hey,
that is incredible.
I know we're getting short on time. I wanted to go to a few
Oh man,
things.
are we getting short on time? Here's the problem.
I know.
Our Panera moments are like this. I mean, 2 hours later.
We both just said 2 hours. Yeah, and all jacked up on coffee. So I made this post, and here's what I said. I want to kind of preface it with this. I went to Facebook this morning knowing that you were going to be here today, and I said, I need your input on today's episode of Unleashed. I'll be talking about the constant flood of political posts and how it's affecting us, and I want to include your thoughts in the conversation. I said, so here's the question, or questions, whatever. How do all the political posts in your feed affect you? Do they shift your mood? Do they drain your trust in others? Do they make you want to hide, lash out, or quietly unfollow people like I just talked about, that you once respected? Be honest. I said, have you ever lost connection or changed how you feel about someone simply because they constantly keep pushing their views online? And then I said, and now let's go to a deeper level. When does a post, that's what it was, cross the line? Is it when the name calling starts? When violence is given a green light? When someone assassinates another person's character just because they don't align with a certain party or train of thought? And then I said, our world is louder than ever, but not everything that's loud is wise.
Yeah.
Drop your thoughts below. I said, now let me just kind of give a brief thing on that, and then we'll wrap this up. So I'm not going to read all these. I'm just going to start off with the first one that came in. Let's just do that. Maybe the first and second one.
This was a Facebook post you put out just so people know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all of us, I think we go, my gosh, I'm so sick and tired of seeing political stuff on social media. Or advertisements.
Yeah.
We're just like, can I just show me puppies? But fun stuff. I mean, family, relationships, right? Yeah. Don't keep causing divisiveness. I get tired of it. So anyhow, some of these people were too, and they said, here was the first post. I'm just done with it, honestly. I'm tired of the constant barrage, honestly, from both sides. Tired of opening my social media that I used to enjoy, seeing the joy of things going on in my friends' lives, the vacations, the success, etc., to now only see the constant barrage of he said, she said. My side is better than yours, lies and mistrust. You can't honestly believe anything anymore from anyone when it comes to politics. I've actually resorted to not unfollowing, but snoozing, like we talked about, several people on my newsfeed because of their literal hatred-filled posts. Let me just read the next one, and then we'll just kind of end this thing. Next person said, I don't believe God gives a hoot about our political parties. He said, his relationship with us is on an individual basis, but if the political platform we embrace takes us away from God, God's favor for our nation will suffer. I try to keep an open mind to left and right views, but being conservative, he said, I do make comments from time to time, and in my mind, I may even say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I've never deleted anyone, though, no matter how I feel. I think we have all been there. We can look at something, and because maybe we've thought something through, but they haven't had a chance to yet because they're acting on impulse, because that feeling, something they just heard, saw, experienced, was a trigger.
Yeah.
And so here's what I want to kind of bring things back to today. When you have those things in your life that cause you to trigger, it's kind of like stop, drop, and roll, right? I want you to challenge you with something. Here we go, another 30-day challenge, right? I want to ask you to, before you post something, I want you to take a good look at it. Is it emotionally charged? If it is, write down your thoughts. Sit down and say, here's what I'm thinking. You don't even know. Maybe you start with saying, well, here's how I'm feeling, right? I'm feeling this way.
Sure.
Because sometimes we don't know what the thought is. But then write down, what am I thinking that's making me feel this way, and then act that way. Because if it doesn't line up with the fruit of the Spirit, love, peace, patience, joy, gentleness, kindness, faithfulness, self-control, then we know somewhere in that thought there's a lie we're buying into.
That's right.
I think it's so important that we do these things. Got something you want to finish?
That's so powerful. And one of the things we can do, we can find faithful, trusted, healthy relationships where we can say, tell me what you think. Help me out, and that moment of pause, putting that pause button, and is so healthy for us all. Yeah. Brent, these conversations always go by too quick. I just always love them and the opportunities you and I have just to sit across from one another. We've decided to try to do this every fifth Wednesday, Tuesday, but this one didn't fall that way because of a lot of interruptions and conflicts that I had in my schedule. But what an opportunity just to get this time to sit across, deal with a topic that if we ever let it would put a barrier between our relationship.
Yeah.
But we're just not going to do it.
And let me
It's
just
not
end
worth
with
it.
this. You know, I'm a bow hunter. You guys know that. When I think about the tension that it takes when I'm drawing back that
That's
bow,
right.
the more that I train, the more poundage that I can pull, the more tension, the longer I can hold it before I ever unleash that arrow. When we know who we are in Christ, that we've been created in the image of the living God, when we are no longer held captive by the opinions of others or care whether we live or die, we are extremely dangerous for good, because we have been unleashed. Tension is not a bad thing. It's what you do with it. Where is your focus? Where is your aim? We'll see you next time.